Alrighty, welcome on in, everybody. This is the sixth Berserk PodPlay, hosted by the wonderful and stinky Gas, the gassiest of them all. My name is MulletWesker, and we have a new Berserk fan. She goes by Mads, and today we are going to talk about, I think, primarily the Golden Age and her impressions as a new fan of Berserk. Gas, you want to take it away?
Yes. Before we start, are gonna do the game slightly different than because in the story mode we are past ads has seen. Don't want to give spoilers, so we're gonna do this Eclipse mode, horde mode, go from layer to layer in. And on top of that, ads. I'm gonna let you.
Oh boy. Okay. What are our options? Griffith, Judo, Casca.
Characters you've never seen before.
A couple, yeah.
Um.
And there's different costumes.
Oh, okay. Go Casca.
Casca?
Girl
Okay.
boss.
Now, okay. I guess she only has costume. Most of this.
The later years,
Yeah.
when she's very tired.
I like the later years one.
This might actually be challenging. I have not leveled up Casca. Alright. So to start things off, Mads, how like Berserk? Just impression. Best story ever written, right?
Pretty much, yeah. So far, because I'm actually fairly, I guess, compared to most people, newer to anime in general. I did not watch my first anime, which was Psycho-Pass, until I was in college. Um, and so it's been about 7 years since then, and my favorite anime story up until this point was Attack on Titan. And I finished the 1997 anime, and one of the first things I said to my friends who were with me when I watched was, I think Guts is now my favorite character, maybe above Eren Yeager, which
Nice.
is a very bold statement for me, because I think Eren Yeager is one of the best written characters that I've ever seen. And I'm a massive Lord of the Rings fan, and I think the Berserk story is on par with the world building and the character development and just the struggles and everything that goes into it. I was obsessed. Still am.
I could not agree more. Berserk is to everything, not just Attack on Titan.
Well, yeah, that's the right answer. I've seen half of Attack on Titan. I do like it, but I can't really compare.
I have my gripes with it. But I'm not here to talk about it. I'm here to talk about Berserk. So Mads, real quick, what have you seen? I know we talked alright, but just for everyone.
Yeah, so I started with the 1997 anime. I watched that first. Immediately after I went through the emotional damage of that ending, I was informed that the third movie, I believe it came out in 2012 or 2013, shows a little bit past the point of where the 1997 anime ends, so it was recommended that I watch that. So then I experienced it again. Finished that, and it made a little bit more sense. And then fairly shortly after, I started the 2016 Berserk, which I know is a little controversial to the community, but I just wanted more of the story. So I did watch those 2 seasons, and I have read through the Eclipse in the makeup.
Okay, so you've seen a good portion. Definitely. So
I gotta ask, when you jumped to the third movie right after finishing the 97 show, did you watch the whole Eclipse again? Or
Yes.
were you not ready to suffer that immediately again?
I was looking back, I was not, but I did. Being fully transparent, I guess, I did skip a few minutes of it, specifically the part
Understandable.
with Femto and Casca, because it was a little much to see. They definitely added on to that scene
Yeah.
Yes.
in the movie, and that was a big tough one for me to watch personally. So I did fast forward a little bit through there, but I did rewatch the eclipse and then what happens after, so you actually get to see how they escape when the Skull Knight comes in and carries them off, and kind of the recovery process after, and that's when you realize that Casca is no longer really Casca, and that was really heartbreaking. Like almost,
Mm-hmm.
I I'm not. I think on the same level as the eclipse in some ways, but I wasn't ready for that. I didn't expect that, and so knowing like after everything they'd been through, she's just not her anymore. It was like, man,
You
that's a
thought
gut
it was
punch.
bad enough seeing all these characters that you've come to love die,
Hmm.
like Game of Thrones style, but all in one sequence. And then you're like, oh, okay, Guts and Casca got out. Thank gosh. But then there's one last curveball that Mira hits you with.
Yeah, and in the movie, I think like because Guts like wakes up and sees her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he just starts to run to her, and you're like, oh, okay, they can talk it out. They can like reconnect and try to heal. And then she
Nope.
just screams. I was like, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no,
No
don't do
one's the
this to me.
same after the eclipse. No one.
Yeah, and
Griffith
it
wasn't the
just
only
broke
one
my
who made a
heart.
transformation.
Yeah. Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. I think Guts's transformation that you see is also really interesting because he tries to cope in like just the fighting sense, and he just leaves Casca behind. I think in a way it's, at least from my interpretation of what I've seen so far, it was just too painful
Yeah.
and he
Yes,
couldn't do it. And
totally agree.
in doing that, he kind of lost sight of what was most important to him, which was taking care of her after everything that happened and trying to find a way to fix her. And that was also kind of sad, like seeing. Well, I mean, I guess I don't really know how she would have felt because I'm not fully clear at what I've seen so far, what she can or can't understand. If she's even like fully aware of what had happened entirely or where she is now. So I
Honestly.
was like, man, does she not even know? I don't know if that's worse, you know?
Like, does she even remember
Yeah.
what
Hmm.
happened? Or is
Yeah,
she just forming completely new memories?
yeah. And so knowing that she might not even have the ability to know the bond that her and Gut shared, I was like, that's also really heartbreaking, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they really. I mean, they tear everything away from Guts, like quite literally
Yeah.
everything. He's mangled physically. He's in a very dark place mentally, but I don't believe you've read past. Um, well, you've started the manga, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've made it through the eclipse in the
Okay,
manga.
so then you did see the Black Swordsman arc, which is like the flash forward where the story starts.
Yeah, where Guts is in. I read that after I had seen the 1997 anime, so I was like, because
You
I know
you
the first
understand?
episode of the anime is kind of a very condensed, like watered down version of the Black Swordsman arc,
Yep,
Yes.
and
absolutely.
so reading that and seeing just how unlike Guts is to the Guts that like I came to know. He's
Mm-hmm.
so mean. He
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. He
he
So
doesn't
different.
care at all.
mm-mm.
He's so. You remember the scene in the Black Swordsman arc when the old man and his daughter pick him up in the wagon,
Mm-hmm.
and when they die, he's just like, he really didn't even bat an eye.
No, he looked at their bodies and he was like, "All right, like moving on."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like the scene after he kills that demon, the Lord, and that's where he sees like Griffith again, or Femto, I guess. And then pops out, and he just killed this little girl's dad in front of her, and she just learned like what had happened to her mother, and she was a wreck, and he's just like, go ahead, unalive yourself. Like,
Yeah. He even uses like pedestrians, cannon fodder, and distractions. Like, yeah, he's fucking. And it's really interesting how Mira shows the different like ways to handle trauma with the Eclipse. Not just the Eclipse, but throughout the whole series. With Griffith self-harming during the Golden Age. But Guts handles it healthy throughout the Golden Age. He like talks to people about his issues.
Yeah, but his job is also to murder people for Griffith. It's
Right.
probably very therapeutic for him.
Yeah, true. Get out that rage that we all know he
At
has.
least he's a fun guy to be around during that time.
Yes.
For the most part.
not only that, but he cares about the people around him.
Oh,
Very much.
Like,
absolutely.
especially his crew and
When
what
you
was
go
his name?
back,
Gaston. Like he
Goku, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh. But he cares about them, and he's admired by them, and he wants to do what he can. I mean, ultimately to protect Griffith, but also just the people around him in general. So seeing him go from that, like the character that I came to know through the anime, and then seeing the Black Swordsman arc, I was like, this is not the Guts that I know.
Yeah.
He does not care. And that also, like, that was also kind of tough to see, because I was like, oh, I love Guts so much. Like, I mean, is Guts a good guy? I think he's a good guy that does bad things with
Right.
the goal of good.
He's kind of an anti-hero.
It's really hard to define good in Midland because ultimately everyone is out for themselves or out for whatever the whims of their leader is. I mean, the Hawk ultimately worked for the king to, obtain royalty. But Guts is probably... I like to think of him as a tribal good character. He protects his tribe. He protects the band of the Hawk, and he has people he cares about. But he does do bad things.
He does, yeah. That's the way I framed it to myself, is he's a good guy who does bad things with good intentions, or like hopefully for a good outcome, either for him or the people around him, versus Griffith, who's a bad guy who appears good.
So Griffith is weird in his goals, right? Because, I mean, if his goal is to have his own kingdom, what kind of kingdom does he want? Does he want a kingdom that's good for its people?
Yeah.
Or does he want a kingdom that's good for him and only him?
Does he even know that answer?
Does Griffith know that answer? I have no clue.
I don't think so. I don't think, personally, this is just my interpretation so far, that he's put any thought into what that kingdom would be like, just that he is the king.
I
He's
would
just
agree
working
to that.
towards the goal without thinking, what does it look like when I have it?
Right. It's tough because he is such a person who like looks to the future and plans ahead and that. But at the same time, he shows lack of insight to his character that you could very easily argument of his no.
Yeah, so I almost let it slip. Trying to be careful about spoilers because you haven't been so far, but you will learn more about what that kingdom may or may not look like at some point. So there is more discussion to be had for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, watching the 2016 Berserk, when he came back, I was like, stop. Hold the phone.
What's happening?
Yeah.
He doesn't need to come back. In fact, they can keep him. Keep him down there.
Keep him over there with the god hand.
Yep. I don't need this. I don't need this again. That was a little bit surprising. And then seeing like the crew he assembles. I have not read that far, obviously, so I don't know how accurate it is to the source material.
So the 2016 show is accurate, but it also is more like it's more like an extreme highlight reel. There's a lot of context and scenes missing. I mean, they cut out There's a whole arc called the Lost Children arc, which is what precedes the eclipse in the manga.
Mhm.
So you'll get there soon, actually. That entire Lost Children arc is not in the 2016 show, and it introduces some critical characters. So definitely go by the manga version of the
Mhm.
story once you get to that, and then that show will start to make some more sense.
I know just a little bit about it. It was brought up in a YouTube video I watched about how Guts evolves, and they didn't go too deep into it, just that Guts meets a character in the Lost Children arc, and that's kind of a slight, not a complete turning point, but a slight turning point to him in like learning that it's okay to form connections again. In a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Because for a
And
while, Guts is like, I don't need friends. I don't need love. It's all, that stuff disappears.
So the interesting thing, going back to what we were saying, trauma is like Guts after the eclipse almost reverts back to who he was. We didn't see a lot of to who he was during the Zuzu day, or no, Gambino, sorry.
Back when he was a child mercenary.
Yeah, and he just like killed, he didn't know why, he just there just surviving. Almost suicidal to going into a fight hoping to die.
Oh, that never
Subconsciously.
stops.
Yeah.
The wanton neglect of oneself in combat, that never stops.
Yeah, but it's a little different. Like it's more
Yeah.
he is there to protect, and that's why he doesn't care about himself. While in those days it was like care. And then, as you say, he meets characters, and he kind of goes back to the Band of the Hawk, which you haven't read at this part, but it's not a big. There is a part where he's like, "Wow, I never thought I would have this." Again. You know, referencing Band of the Hawk, and it's like a nice little happy moment for him.
I mean, they do show that in the 2016 anime when he finally gets his new little group together, and
Yeah,
it's
RPG
after,
party, as I call it.
yeah, after they get out of the cave and like the Skull Knight's shown back up and they're all on the bridge, and he looks at me, he's like, I didn't think I'd have this again, like comrades, and I was like, oh
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
nice little moment. And honestly, when I first read that, because I was like, dumb teen, I was like, what? This isn't the Guts I know and love.
No, he's got to be the Black Swordsman, man.
Yeah,
What the fuck?
he's supposed to be a jerk face who just kills things
Like,
undiscriminately.
don't get me wrong, I love me some edgy, violent Berserk, but the story's got to go somewhere at some point.
Yeah. I have
But on
since
the
changed my.
trauma note, do you want to know my main gripe with the 1997 anime now that I've read through?
Yes.
As in, yeah, sure.
The fact that they leave out so much of why Guts is the way that he is when he does finally get to the Band of the Hawk, because in the anime they don't really touch on what happened to him.
Oh no, you mean as a little kid?
Yeah, and
Not at all. They just don't
No.
have the time.
Yeah.
and after he kills that I don't remember his name, the big armored guy at the very beginning, and the guy who was leading the mission was like, hey, I want you to work for me, and puts his hand on his shoulder. He's like, don't touch me.
Don't touch me. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all you get.
That's all you get. And I was like, I think they did a good job, like, showing Casca and what happened to her and how that's developed her as a character, but they just kind of leave Guts as out, and I feel like that's such a big point in him and his character and his development. And I mean, I read through the scene where he and Casca finally acknowledge their feelings for each other. I'm trying to keep it PG.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, there's nothing PG about Berserk.
True, but
That whole
the
chapter they're
conversation
just
that
talking.
they have. Yeah, but he finally opens up to her and tells her what happened, and I think that's where like you finally realize, oh wow, these are like two really broken, damaged people who finally realize they can trust each other and that like the other one is a safe person for them. And it's still really beautiful in the 1997 anime when that part comes around, but I feel like the emotional significance is not quite as prevalent, in my opinion.
I think
But
the movies even show less. Like, I think they have like one montage flashback. That's it. I remember.
Are we talking the scene where they finally, you know, take their clothes off and have that long conversation and all that?
Yeah.
That's in the movies, and there's quite a. Oh, I can tell you what's different about it.
No, I
in
meant
the
the
movies.
Backstory, the Guts backstory. That's right.
Ah, okay, yeah, no, the movies skimp on that as much as the show did. If
I
not
think that's
even
really
less.
unfortunate. Like, I think that's I think it's a really tough thing to try to show.
Absolutely.
Respectfully. So like I understand the difficulty of including a topic like that, but I also think not acknowledging it at all or as sparingly as they did is also just not doing it justice, in my opinion. That's my gripe with it. In the anime, at least.
That's fair.
Nope, totally fine to have that gripe. I agree.
Yeah. There's so much they out. Like, one thing that I really enjoy that you just don't get anything. Like, you get a very small hint in the but it's the relationship with the king.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
In the
yeah.
in the shows and stuff, the king is like a good guy. He's
a good guy, and you wouldn't mind working for him.
Yeah, you know, he's a nice king. Not in the manga. In the manga, he's a big ass creep. You know.
Oh yeah. I gotta say, I'm a fairly like I don't get creeped out easily. That's what I'll say. It takes a lot to kind of make me go, ooh. And when I read that part of him sneaking in her room, I was like, I got the ick real bad.
Yeah.
I was like,
that's the correct reaction.
No.
Yeah.
It's so much worse than it, because he just seems like, I don't know, fairly normal dad. Like,
and as soon as Griffith does what he does, it's like he doesn't feel like he's her father anymore. It's almost as if he was waiting for someone else to take the first step towards the ick, and now the king's like, okay, I can do this now. It's really fucking weird and awful.
Well, especially the dialogue of him going like, oh, she looks so much like her mom now. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, ooh.
Yep.
Oh no.
Yep.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic of things that are different between the manga and the show and movies, so you're up to volume 13, you said, of the manga, so I think you've seen this. The character of, oh my god, what is his name? The apostle that the king keeps in the basement. Wild. I so wish we could have gotten the chase with the Bakaraka in the sewers and the chase with Wild and the Band of the Hawk in one of the movies or the shows. And I'm so sad we never got to see that, because I think the battle between Guts and Wild in the forest just before the eclipse is one of those really good world building moments. Particularly the moment where he is about to kill Guts or Casca and Zod steps in. And Zod, you know, is like, or actually, I don't think Zod says anything at first. And Wild's like, what are you doing? We're apostles. They said we can do whatever we want. And Zod is like, and I'm doing exactly that, and just rips him in half.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck? What? There's implication there of, you know, the greater world and the mechanisms behind it.
And one of the things that I'm really interested in, because I still don't know. I saw it in the 2016 anime, and we see a little bit of it, like, through Rickard's eyes of Zod and the Skull Knight fighting, but they have mad beef. And so I want to know why. So I'm excited to like learn more about that, because they hint to you in the manga that when they're going down the tower to rescue Griffith, they tell the story about the king who wasn't really great, and he wore the skull helmet, and he built this like metropolis here, and then it shows like the pan down to all the skulls down there with the brand of sacrifice on it. So if I'm reading the room right, that's supposed to be the Skull Knight. And he obviously doesn't like Zod. Every time we see them, almost they're fighting. And I was like, okay, I'm excited to know more about this. So I can't wait.
In due time.
Yeah. I know there's something there, so I'm excited to learn more about it because I love him. I love the Skull Knight so far.
Skull Knight's awesome.
He's a badass.
He is a great character, and in fact, my friends and I were talking about him last night, and they were like, when you think about it, the Skull Knight is a very generic fantasy creature, but they pull off the concept of him so well in Berserk that you can't help but like scream at the pages to tell you more.
Yeah. And the correlations between him and Guts comparisons that's like my favorite part of it. It's almost like you're looking into Guts's.
So, question for you, Mads. Have you stumbled upon that, perhaps in the osmosis of Berserk and reading about it online? Have you stumbled upon the question of, or the comparisons of those two characters and their similarities?
Not really, actually, though. After watching the 2016 anime, I get it a little more now, especially like once Guts gets the Berserker armor, and they're like on the beach, and he shows up and he tries to warn him about like what that armor will do to him. And Guts is like, "How would you know?" And he's like, "'Cause I've been there."
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was like, "Oh, it's like Guts is like almost walking in the same footsteps as him." So I saw that little tidbit of it, like that's kind of where I gathered that. But also the fact that he always seems to like find Guts, because at first I was like, is he really Guts's ally? Like when I first saw him,
because he's a scary, bad-looking dude.
Yeah, I was kind of worried it would be like a Zod situation, because Zod is very much not on Guts' side. But whenever he's fighting, what's his name? Is it Boscone, the Rhino guy? Zod throws him the sword.
Yeah.
The leader of the Purple Rhino Knights.
Yeah, he throws him the sword, so I was like,
that's
why?
another scene that's not in the show or the movies, and it hurts me because Zod is doing it out of respect for the one opponent in the last 300 years or whatever he says that wounded him.
It's in the 96. Isn't it? Just a small little. I know they changed it.
It might be.
I know they changed it in the movie.
It's not in the trilogy of movies, which I thought was very weird.
They changed it to where he found
doing some weird flourishy bullshit and wins the fight.
He finds like a flag with a spear.
It struck me as a weird thing to change. Like, why are you taking away this really nice character building moment between them?
Yeah, it was very strange.
Yeah, it is touched on in the 97 anime, but not to the extent it is in the manga. So I was like, because when we first see Skull Knight, and he kind of... Honestly, though, I think that's one of my favorite panels so far reading, is when he finally shows himself to Guts, and the whole line about him being a struggler and to like continue to struggle. I loved that. I was like, ooh, this is good. This is really good.
Struggler.
Never give up.
Yep. That's one of the coldest panels. I loved it. That's one of my favorites.
So, I have a question. Speaking of like the God Hand, skeleton, all that stuff. So what was your initial reaction to God Hand showed up?
In like my very first one, like in the anime?
Yeah, first ever.
I was very confused at first, to be completely honest, because the first one you see is the woman, and she's just like boobies out, like coming up out of the ground. I was like, ayo.
Very vampire BDSM character.
Yeah, I was like, is this like dinner and a show? Like, what are we getting here?
For a second where you're like, oh, this is a good thing that's gonna happen, right? Nope.
I was kind of like, oh, mommy, sorry. And then like fast forward a couple minutes and I was like, oh shit, never mind. I'm not on your side. But yeah, I was very confused because one of the dudes like reminded me of Slimer from Ghostbusters.
the round floating guys.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's a great comparison.
I was talking to my friends. I was like, is this like a Ghostbusters crossover? What is he doing here? And then the dude with his brain out popped up, like just ginormous, and
Void,
I was,
I believe.
yeah. And I was like, never mind. I don't think this is as lit as I'm thinking it's going to be. And like I was so confused watching it for the first time because Griffith obviously has that vision of the castle. He rides the carriage off, he gets there, and then he tries to kill himself. I was like, wait. And then the eclipse starts, like the Baelid starts doing its thing, and then Guts shows up and he tries to tell them to stop, like to not get
And
any
not
closer.
touch him.
Yeah. And he can't, obviously, because he doesn't have a tongue. And then they get there, and the God Hand rocks up, and they're like starting to explain what's going down. And I was like, did he know? Like, did he have some idea of this? And then they explain, like, oh, you're all supposed to be sacrifices, and they give that whole spiel to Griffith. And the scene that I was confused by was like when that hand comes up out of the ground and Guts is obviously with him. Guts starts to fall off. Griffith holds on to him.
Yeah,
Griffith doesn't quite know what's happening.
Yeah, Griffith, I don't think knew what was happening. I think he had an idea that something was going to happen because he was getting visions and he was being visited by those creepy wall ghosts while he was in the dungeon.
Yeah.
So he knew that something was coming, but he had no idea what. And even though he basically was in fuck you, Guts, I hate you mode since the day Guts left, in the face of the eclipse happening and the demons, he was probably like, oh my god, my best friend Guts, don't leave me. What the fuck is going on?
I need help. I can't move my arms.
Very conflicted, for sure.
So, going back to what you said about Griffith seeing the castle and riding down the horses and then trying to kill himself, that is fascinating. I love that part because if you remember when they first encounter Zod sees the Baelid, like, oh ho, you guys are in for a good time. But
Phrasing, but yeah.
Yeah, but the direct quote is something like, you guys are fucked. Okay, that's not the direct quote part, but
he says something like, whenever his ambition wanes.
I think it was dreams. It was like when his dreams
consider this
shatters.
man your friend, but beware when his ambition crumbles.
Yeah,
something like that.
That was it. And yeah, so that moment is like him trying to kill himself. That's the crumbling. That is that moment. And it's fascinating because that means before that, kind of still had hope that he would recover, right? And
I don't think Griffith ever had hope, but everyone else was trying to trick themselves that they had hope.
I would argue, because if you remember right before that carriage ride, he overheard them talking, and they literally say, like, Griffith can't recover from it. Like, he's so physically hurt, he cannot. Yeah, I think that's supposed to be that simple. Lost all hope. Done. Can't even... He doesn't even have the strength to finish the job, and then the Baelid shows up.
I think his ambition crumbled translates to when he tries to commit unalive, because the Baelid comes to life right after he fails to fall forward on that pike.
Exactly.
Yeah, and watching that for the first time was really confusing because that statement from Zod when they first meet, he definitely says it, but I feel like it doesn't stick with you as much as it does when you read it for some reason.
Right.
So by the time that happened, I totally forgot he said that by the time I got to that point. So I was like, why did he just try to, like...
The first time I watched the show, by the time I got to the final episode, I completely forgot the first episode even happened. So I was like, what? This super now? What? Like, I had no idea the show was going to take that hard of a turn.
Well, and that's such an interesting way with how the show plays out compared to, like, the manga. Because the manga, you have the 3 volumes of Black Swordsman stuff. So you know something demonic is happening.
It's much more in the back of your mind.
Yeah. And that would be important to why Wild is important to the story, just as a reminder.
Yeah, as a lead up.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Mads. This was one I found online a few years ago. So your first real source material exposure was the 97 show? Is that right? Okay, so you know from the first episode that Griffith is going to betray Guts, or at least be some kind of major villain by the end, correct?
I don't think it was quite as clear to me until the very end of that episode. Because it just kind of throws you in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Do
was
they?
like,
They
But
even
you
mention
knew-
Griffith in the first episode?
They
They
do.
don't-
They show
yeah.
his femto form shortly, while Guts is out in the woods having like a panic attack in the because the ghosts are coming after him. But so my question is, you knew that at some point Griffith was going to become the villain and betray our main character. While you're watching the show, was there a moment where you're like, "Oh, is this it? Is this the part where Griffith becomes the villain?" Or were you just so entranced that maybe that question never even passed your mind?
I was pretty entranced. I was waiting for like a really big I don't know, indicator that was happening. I think in my mind, like watching it for the first time was when he sends Guts to kill Julius. I was like, okay, this is where I feel like his
Griffith
whole
might
goal
not be
is getting a little
fully
dirty.
truthful.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's like
I was
showing
like,
his
the-
true colors.
Like, I was like, okay, and then I also enjoyed watching that part. When, like, just for a few reasons, but I think him seeing like Julius fighting his son, and he was like, oh shit, I was in his shoes. And then whenever it happens, I teared up like whenever he ended up killing him.
Oh
One of the
yeah, even
saddest
Guts
moments.
was like, "Oh, I fucked up."
Yeah, and so seeing like Guts' reaction to that after what Griffith had ordered him to do, I was like, okay, this is maybe where Griffith's turning into the bad guy. And then I think where I was really like, all right, this is the time, was when Guts says he wanted to leave, and then he beats Griffith. I was like, this is okay.
Well,
now I
wasn't
get
it
it.
so satisfying though? Just
It really
one
was.
swing.
Yeah, it really was. But that's when I was fairly confident that that was the point where things would get fishy.
Well, and
Okay.
comparing Griffith and Guts' reaction. I mean, obviously Guts had a first-hand look, but Griffith smiles. There's that. Both.
When he hears that the kid died.
Yeah. Well, both
Yeah.
the adult and the kid.
Because in Griffith, like, it was a happy accident because Griffith was like, great, one less person in the line of succession for me to
Exactly.
deal with.
Whereas Guts, just, he was mortified with himself. I mean, even like the way it's drawn in the manga, the expression on his face,
Oh, yeah.
and like where he just holds his hand, he just freezes, and like he's upset. And in the anime, I think they actually do a really good job of showing like his emotional reaction to that, like, oh my god, what did I just do? Like, and he kind of freaks out. I think that's one of the few times, at least in the whole show, that I can remember, other than the eclipse, where we see Guts like kind of actually panic. For the most part, he seems like fairly chill, even though when he's fighting, he's obviously not chill.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I guess I mean from like an actual panic or like sadness standpoint.
Like, he's always composed.
Yes.
Pretty much. And if he's not composed, he's usually like angry or just enjoying like the fight. But that's one of the few times we see like an emotion outside of that. And I was like, oh no,
You
poor
see
Guts.
regret.
Yeah, he feels horrible. And I was like, oh no.
And
It's just unfortunate too, because it wasn't intentional. He was just like, oh, someone saw me. Like, Griffith
Yeah,
wants
it was-
this to be a secret.
it was a
and just
pure
freeze.
reaction.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it already, but I just want the art and showing emotion in the manga. Like, I have never seen art express emotion so well, like Miura
Yeah.
can do. Like, you know,
I mean-
like you said, you know what he's feeling just by looking.
Yeah. And I mean, watching, because the anime, the 1997 one, was my first experience with the eclipse. But damn, seeing it depicted in the manga, like it's almost nauseating. You know, it's so brutal. Like it hurts to read. And especially when Guts is watching what Femto does, just the like desperation and horror
Oh yeah,
in
the
his
art
face.
is so good that you cannot take your eyes off of it, even
No.
when it's at its worst.
Yeah, it's a train wreck. Like you want to look away, but you kind of can't.
Hmm.
That speaking of that part, that's one of my favorite parts. Griffith is, or not Griffith, Guts is pinned down, and Griffith is doing Casca. We all know. And Casca is sitting there saying, don't look, look. And Guts doesn't listen. He's wide-eyed,
Oh, man.
stares, and then that's when he eventually gets stabbed in the eye, and then vision literally goes red because wow, the symbolism there. Wow,
Yeah.
like so great. One of my favorite moments, even though it's super brutal.
And the callback to it too, I'm jumping way ahead, but in the 2016 anime at least, when they're fighting Mosgus, like
Yeah,
he's got his little
the other hand and all that.
yeah, he's got his henchmen, and like one of them has the bird claws on his feet now, and he grabs Guts, and like you see that claw like almost above his eye, and I was like, oh, he's about to go nuts.
Yeah.
And he does. But I was like, oh, the callback to that, like, man.
They do a great job at showing like that trauma. Like, oh yeah, this happened 50 chapters ago, but you know, it still affects the character. That's how real life.
Yes.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, the combination of seeing him holding Casca and then that claw, like, you just know. I mean, they don't show it. And I haven't read to that point yet. They don't show it in the anime, but you can connect the dots as to what is probably going through his brain right then. It's just a straight flashback. So I was like, oh, he's gonna go crazy on them.
Yeah, I really like those henchmen of Mosgus, the mask wearing guys.
Yeah.
So such great awful designs.
It's so I love those characters too because they totally see the villain guy, good guy, as which is a constant thing in that anime and manga. Who's good, who's bad? You know, who fucking knows? Does it even matter? You know. But lighting up ads, I have another question. Who, out of all the Band of the Hawk, not including the main characters, so not Griffith, not Casca, not Gut, who's your favorite Band of the Hawk character?
That's a tough one. I think Judo.
That's the correct answer.
Good choice.
I do love all of them. I love Pippin. He's so wholesome.
Yeah, he's great.
He's
Fighting
great,
right
but
now.
I think Judo, especially whenever the eclipse happens, and in the manga it's so sad because like that's when it clicks that like he loved Casca the whole time, and he still like had nothing but respect and admiration for her, and he's like, I always thought I was a smooth talker, but I guess I can't be.
That line
And I didn't get a chance to tell you, and I was like, oh no. But yeah, in the anime when that happened, that's when I like went from just being mortified by what I was seeing to full on crying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can see that, hey, there's more story here with this character. Like, there's so much going on that we didn't see. And now we're not going to see.
People really like to say, people like to think they're smart and say, oh, Berserk is just a bunch of torture porn. And I'm like, you know, there's some violent imagery for the sake of violence, but you're discounting all of the character relationships and what comes out during the eclipse and other sequences, you know?
Speaking of Pippin, you're fighting him right now. Poor Pippin.
I am.
But yeah, I honestly, that's a really good point. Like, as a new fan of Berserk, I wish I had started this earlier. And I always had heard about it. Like, it gets brought up all the time as like a must watch or a must read. Um, I avoided it for that reason for so long. Because I had heard nothing but like the bad stuff that, there's a lot of
Oh
just
yeah, there are people
gore.
that they can't get over the Black Swordsman arc.
Yeah, it's for the edgelords. Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
SA going on, and I had gotten the impression, because I'd only heard the bad things, that this was not something I could enjoy because it was so far away from the things I usually love in my stories, which is really good character development,
Triumph.
strong women, like
Mhm.
a beautiful world, like a lot to learn about and a lot to deduce from. And I'd only heard the bad.
Mhm.
And I started it because
Steering you wrong.
I know, and I brought it up to one of my friends who had watched Berserk a really long time ago because I was looking for a new show to watch. I'd started what did I start? Bungo Stray Dogs, and it just wasn't doing it for me. And I was like, I feel like I kind of want to start Berserk. And he was kind of like, it is really, really good. And he was like, but I know what you like in shows, and like, just to give you a heads up. And he told me like about the SA stuff because he knows that's something I usually don't like. And I was like, yeah, I appreciate the heads up. I'll think about it. And I decided it was probably something, if I was going to watch, I needed to do it with others. So I did a watch party in my Discord, and I got, I think, 3 episodes in. Because the first episode, when you're first starting out, doesn't make any sense.
Right.
No.
The Black Swordsman. So I was like, I don't really like this. I'll give it a couple more episodes. And no joke, we binged the entire 1997 anime in about 2 or 3 evenings. I think it was 3 evenings. And the last
Mhm.
evening was the last, like, 3 episodes.
What episode was it that made you go, "That's it, I'm full in"?
Or moment.
I think it was 3. I think when Guts finally meets Griffith and they have that fight, I was like, okay, this is interesting.
There's
There's
more going
something
on here.
Well, yeah, because that's when you see like Casca and Quarkus, and like you start to meet some of the other characters.
Mhm.
And you already know something bad's gonna happen. So I think at that point, when those were introduced, I was like, now I want to know what happens.
Yeah.
And then it just sucked me in. But I do wish I had started it earlier. I just let other people talking about all the edgy stuff kind of sway me away from it for too
Mhm.
long, which I recognize now. But
Yeah.
at the time, it's kind of hard to like want to dedicate time to something when all you hear is the bad things. So I feel like people should talk more about all the good stuff that is in Berserk outside of that.
I do always tell people I'm talking about. It's like, it's great, you'll love it, but not for everyone. People are not gonna like. People aren't into that. Fine. But if you can get past that, you're 100% in for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Which, speaking of Casca, I know we talked about this a little. What is up with no one talking about how one of the strongest female characters like ever written?
Oh my god, I cannot get over that now that I've seen it. And I said it to my friends. I was like, why does no one I said this after her and Guts fall off the cliff and like they have their first like bonding moment. And I was like, she is a girl boss. And yet
Yeah,
whenever
yes.
people talk about strong women in anime, I have never heard her name mentioned. Not once.
Ever.
I think it definitely largely is related to the fact that her character significantly changes, for lack of going into detail. That I think a lot of people go, yeah, but, and then they think about her post Eclipse, which is not a reason to discount her. And there's more character evolution for her that you'll, find as you continue to read the show or the manga. But yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense because in the Golden Age, she's right up there. I mean, don't forget, like, she took on Guts, once. And,
Held her own a little bit.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if Guts doesn't kill you in one swing, you're already above pretty much everyone else swinging a sword.
Yeah.
If he's got to kill you or put you down in 2 swings, you're pretty good.
Well, I mean, I think it also just like the world of Berserk. Like, women don't always have it the best, right?
No, it's a very dark medieval fantasy setting. So yeah, bad things happen to vulnerable people.
Yep. And not only is she strong in her abilities, she is respected. They call her sister.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like,
she's the mom of the group, and they're not like fawning over her. They're like, they respect her, like you said.
Becomes the leader at a point.
Yeah.
And no one even questions it. Like, yeah, this the natural.
And it's not we have to defend her kind of way, because they know she can hold her own. It's just a admiration for her and what she has built and the respect she's earned among the Band of the Hawk. And even like other people hear about it, right? Whenever she goes to that ball, they're like, "Oh, it's the woman leader from the Band of the Hawk." And they're just like,
and she's like, "Oh, what's fucking this dress?
Yeah.
God damn it!"
Yeah, she's just like pissed she's in a dress, but everyone's like, oh, "It's her," and they fawn over her too because people know about her and what she's capable of.
Even
and that
though
was
those
something
people have like idea, actual.
Yeah, and even Guts, right? Like, we know he respects Griffith, but up until that point where they fall off and she's not feeling the best, they don't even really like each other.
No,
Like,
they really hate each other up until that cave bonding.
Yep, and he didn't save her because he liked her. He saved her because she was a comrade. And then they have that bonding moment, and Guts learns about her, and whenever he tells her to go, like, it's not I'll protect you. It's this is the smart tactical decision right now. And you got this. And I love too that he kind of pokes at her for being a woman, but not to be sexist, to like, because he knows it'll push her buttons.
Yeah, it'll get her going,
Yeah, and he's the little smile he does in the manga panel. I was like, I love this because he knows what he's doing. He's not doing it to be an asshole. He's doing it because he knows this will get her butt in gear, regardless of how crappy she feels.
And then she throws a knife.
Yep.
Almost at his head. Yeah. That whole part is so great. It's such a great character development. Asuka having her lady time and cannot fight that stupid asshole. Worst character ever.
He is the worst too. And see, in the show...
Sorry, just to finish, then she gets his revenge later, and he's like, "Aha, I beat you once," and she's like, "Yeah, but I was at like 10% strength then.
Yeah.
We're gonna kick your ass."
Yep, and now I'm at 100, so...
Yeah.
Let's go. But that was another thing that I was like, did they... Because in the anime, right? Whenever Guts was like, "Oh, she has a fever," I was like... She was fine. Like, what happened? I'm so confused as to why she's not feeling good right now. And then in the manga, they're like, "Oh, she's on her period." And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, because don't they say something like, "Man, it's hard enough to be a woman, but a woman on the battlefield," or something like that.
Yeah, and they talk about it like in more detail, but in the show it's just like, "Oh, she's kind of under the weather," but they don't really explain why.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, and I was like, I don't know if this is a good touch or a bad touch, because, I mean, as a woman, usually don't get a fever. So I was like, that's a weird, like, inclusion, but...
Yeah, there's a lot of little differences between the manga and the 97 show and the movies, where they change stuff, dialogue, for whatever reason, but, yeah, it's confusing.
Yeah, but I loved Guts all through that, because he wasn't even, like, phased. He was just like, this is what we gotta do, like... She did this for me, so here we go. Yeah. And it's fine, but it gave me a chuckle how pissed she was when she woke up. Just
Yeah.
throwing everything at him.
She's like still delirious, just kind of like looks. Finally, it happened. She's like, "Hey, fuck you."
Yep.
And then even after that, when she's healed, and one of the coolest moments show.
Yes, I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, and she's trying to fight with Guts, and Guts is like, "No, you need to stay away." What does he say? He's like, "Your Griffith's sword, go to your sheath," something along those lines. And yeah, he's there for Casca, but also for Griffith. And
It's so good. And just watching, like, absolute Black Air Force energy. Just stomping everyone around him. And he doesn't care. He's having a good time.
Oh,
He's,
yeah.
like, he's not even bothered.
well, he even
Yeah,
he even
through his
distracts himself.
hand and
Yeah, he even distracts himself where he's thinking about leaving the Hawks at that point. And
he's like, this is my thinking time. Like, you know how most people get their good ideas while they're on the toilet or they're driving?
yeah, right?
Guts gets his thinking time when he's murdering the enemy soldiers.
It's so true. But that is a great line where he's thinking that, and at one point he's like, wait, I can't. Hey, like, I need to be thinking about one thing, that is killing. That is fighting my enemy. And it's like, oh, go be your best self.
Yes, exactly. Live your best life, King. But one of my favorite moments, too, happens after that, actually, the Campfire of Dreams.
Yes.
I love that. So beautiful.
Is that the scene where he's all bandaged up and he's on the hilltop and Casca brings him the medicine?
Yep.
That's when he first admits to, well, kind of figures it out, but that he...
Yep. And I loved everything about that scene. Both, I think the anime actually did it really good justice. And then reading it too, it's so good. It's such good writing, and it's just one of a rare moments of pure, like, quiet. It's just two people processing what just happened, and they're talking, and they're acknowledging each other, and it's just a really sweet, calm moment of peace, and I love it.
And that's a big moment, going back to what... That is a big moment that shows how well Guts can trauma. Because he's being healthy there. He's talking about it. He's, explaining his thoughts. He's not just holding it. Something's obviously... he doesn't... Like, he has a place in the... He's talking about it. Which then also shows how traumatic of event the eclipse is, because Guts stops being. He reverts back to when he was handling things in a horrible.
Yes, exactly.
So good at showing trauma.
I think about Guts a lot because I'm like, what would Guts do? you ever hear those motivational posters like, what would so and so do? I'm like, what would Guts do? Would Guts give up, or would he get really pissed off and find a solution?
Yeah, it's like people say, Jesus, take the wheel. Nuh-uh. Guts, take the wheel.
Guts, pick up the hilt.
Yeah.
So, you have read through the Golden Age, and you're about to go to the Lost Children arc, Mads. What, I guess kind of some of what's ahead because you've watched the 2016 show, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts about what is in store for Guts and crew based on what you know so far.
I'm very excited to read through his evolution, like, because I know he gets to a point where he's like, I can have friends again, like, this is okay, and he's one of my favorite characters ever at this point, so I'm excited to, like, actually see all the details that go into that, because obviously with it being an anime, they just don't have the time to include all the little things. I mean, the Lost Children arc is not in there. So I think seeing that growth, because he basically has to grow all over again from that.
Right.
and I'm excited to see that. And I have managed to avoid spoilers for after. I think it's called the Conviction arc. I think that's what it is.
Whatever you're doing to avoid those spoilers, keep it up.
Yeah. But I am genuinely curious and hopeful that Casca gets her memory back, or that maybe not even her memory back, but just like that she
needs some sense of self back.
Yeah, I want her to at least be capable of speech, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want her to be able to talk to Guts again. I want that for both of them. Like, they both need that so bad. And I don't know whether or not that happens yet. Obviously, rest in peace, Miura, but we don't know if we're gonna get more Berserk. I don't even know where it leaves off at that point, like, in their relationship, but I hope there's something. I hope so bad.
Is still conversation, to the best of my knowledge, about whether or not we're gonna get any more. The last I had read was that Miura had a good friend of his that was his own manga illustrator, and I believe the publishing house is currently in talks with Miura's friend to say, like, hey man, do you think you're up to continue this, with the support of Miura's assistants that were helping him for like the last 15 years or so. But nothing's official right now.
Because I know they talked with story to go. I hope it happens, even if it's not Miura's perfect story.
We had a, I think it was me, you, Gas, and our friend Professor Jam, who's been on the show once before, I believe. I think we had a Discord conversation about, like, where the heck does this story even end anyway?
Yes. I believe that was episode 3.
So once you're all caught up, Mads, we could maybe revisit that topic, because I love ridiculous theory crafting, and I mean, we quite literally don't know where the story is gonna go, and we may never. So why not?
I will say, at this point, it's. I know you haven't read this, Mad, and it's not gonna, but it's kind of a happy ending, where if it like ended right now.
Well, actually, can you say that? Because they are releasing one more volume of the finished work.
I thought they did already, or is there another one?
I thought it was coming out this fall, unless I'm mistaken.
I have no idea.
Oh, well, anyway, yeah, the recent events in the manga could be considered perhaps one of the happiest endings these characters are going to get, but we really don't know quite yet.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and second piece to what I hope, I want to see Guts beat the shit out of Griffith. That's something. I want to see them throw down, and I want to see Guts win. And now that I know he does get the Berserker armor, I think that gives him more of a shot. But I just want to see him, like, smack him around.
You want to see him go full barbarian, one-on-one. Oh my god, what if they fight on the top of a green grassy hill one more time?
Yeah.
Clear day.
Without Zod's bitch ass around. Because I know he's pulling up to save Griffith, and it's like, no, let boy fight his own battles.
So since you've brought Zod up, I fully expect at some point, because you've watched the 2016 show, so you know that Zod and Griffith are kind of working together. I fully expect Zod to pull a betrayal on Griffith. Absolutely.
I would love that. I hope so.
Because if you go back to the part in the manga where Griffith shows up and is like, hey, you're working for me, I don't think Zod agreed to that willingly at all.
I hope he does.
Right?
Give Griffith a taste of his own medicine.
Yeah.
Get stabbed in the back.
And if you think about it, who are the two most powerful characters in the world right now besides Griffith and the God Hand?
I mean,
hypothetical.
I'm off of like just what I know. I don't fully know. I mean, I would say, based on what I know, like the Skull Knight, because I know he's been collecting the Baelids. He's got a sword with him. Like, he can warp time and space.
Oh yeah, that's true. Briefly. I wasn't thinking about that, but I was going to say Guts and Zod are probably the two guys you do not fuck with. And Skull Knight. Can you imagine? Oh my god, there's going to be a whole plot line, or maybe there was going to be a whole plot line about Skull Knight and Zod settling their beef, and then it's the three of them, you know, all against Griffith. Imagine that showdown.
I don't know. I can't. If anything, I would see it as like it would play out where Griffith is like, "Hey Zod, come help me," and Zod's like, "Nah, I'm gonna fight the Skull Knight instead."
Shows up and then he just stands there.
Yeah, he's
Just
like,
folds his arms.
yeah, he's just, like, I'd rather see how this plays out, kind of thing. Not like a full-on betrayal, but like little tiny bit.
Well, the current situation will benefit me more, so I'm not going to affect this situation.
Right? Yeah. Which, by the way, Mads, you've seen a lot of apostles. Not all of them, but a lot of them. What's your favorite apostle?
Oh.
Whether it's fight or look or all the above.
That's a tough one. A lot of them, I mean, I think they all look badass. Like, just the way that they're
They're
created.
so nightmarish.
Yeah, they're so creepy and cool. I mean, honestly, I think the one that Guts fights in the Black Swordsman arc with the daughter, like, I thought, because that's at least
Baron.
from what
The slug guy, yeah.
Yeah, from what I've seen so far, at least, that's the first one that we get more of like a backstory on. So kind of hearing about like how he came to be an apostle and what his ultimate goal was, which he lost sight of it, but it was to take care of his daughter. And I don't know, that was really interesting, and seeing them in like the, I don't know, is it accurate to call it hell? With all those staircases?
Absolutely.
Hell to some people, heaven to others.
The worlds that show up that accompany the God Hand are definitely types of hell.
Yeah, but seeing them there and like, they basically say, well, we can keep you alive, sacrifice your daughter.
And he's like, yeah, do it.
No.
And he still really doesn't, and this is after like Guts has basically aligned the stars to let his daughter hear exactly what happened to her mom and what he's become since then. It was just interesting because from what I've seen so far, there aren't many apostles you get that much insight into.
Yeah.
There's
so
definitely layers or tiers of apostle, I would say.
Yeah, you definitely see the
watching-
tears and like you would have seen it as in the all the crazy apostles side.
Yeah. Oh, but watching Guts absolutely body that snake apostle in the first episode.
Oh yeah.
So good. He just keeps shooting him in the face.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he's like
Just
summon
having the time
them.
of his life. Yeah.
Summon them. He's like, I don't know how. He's like, you better figure it out.
Yeah, just arrow, 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 like letting him have it. I'm just like, all right, this is satisfying.
I'm sorry. Are you begging like a human right now?
Yes, because his whole thing was like, human. I'm not
Yep.
human. Yeah. Oh.
So what other I don't know, what other mind-blowing moments do you need to gush about? Is there anything you need to just get out?
That's a loaded question. I have so many things I could go on about. Oh, I will say, it was very shocking, reading, after watching the anime, knowing what happens. I open up the manga, first thing I see is Guts and some demon chief. I was like, how did we get to this point?
Okay, so I have a funny story about that, because I actually have the first volume of Berserk. I started at this series very young. I was not even a teen. And I watched the 96 anime. And I watched it with my brother, so whenever, like, on the screen, like, go in the other room, call you back when they're, you know. But yeah, my brother thought it'd be a good idea for Christmas that year, because he knew how much I loved it, to get me the first volume. And
Had he not read it?
No, he had not read it, and the volume was like in plastic, so he couldn't even like open it, you know.
Oh, that's how you know you don't buy it for a young person.
So first I open it up and my mom's looking at it. First thing she sees is boobies. She's like, "What? You can't read that!" And I'm so disappointed because I'm like, but I want to, you know. I'm like 10 years old. Like, what do you mean I can't read it? She's like, "You can't read that till you're older." I'm like, "What?"
But yeah, as I opened it up and I was like, "My guy's out here clapping demon cheeks."
You're like, wow, Guts, you've really gone places.
Which,
yeah,
by the way, did you realize which demon that was?
yeah. It was, is her name Slot?
No, you're talking about Slain.
I don't
Godhand?
think she has a name, but she's in the Eclipse briefly.
Yeah. It's not the so I was like, now that I've seen a 2016 anime, because it's her, like the God Hand one who shows up in the caves, like with where all the trolls are.
Yes.
And
Yes, that is
she's
Slime.
got she's got a little, well, it's not fully clear. It seems like she's got a little bit of a thing for guts. So
She's got
I
a
always
thing
thought that
for
was
everything.
her. She does. Yeah. Just
It's
talk about uteruses and shit.
so that's not her. As far as I'm aware, unless I'm horribly misremembering the manga, none of the God Hand have died.
No.
So
that in the cave, that's technically not even like just blessing things, flesh.
Yeah.
So the demon that Guts blows up in the first page is the demon that appeared as a nude woman to Corcus in the Eclipse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
What
yeah,
does
I do
that
remember
mean?
that now. That makes sense.
Guts gets his avenge for Corcus.
That is kind of crazy because they didn't even. Corcus hated him.
Corcus
And
really
yeah,
hated him.
Member of the Hawks, where when I rewatched the show, I'm like, you are just rotten.
Yeah. But it's great because you kind of need that character to call Guts and his shit out. Like
yeah,
when
Corcus was right a few times.
right,
Sure.
like when Guts is leaving the Band of the Hawk and Corcus is like, "I never liked you. Like you have everything you could ever want here, and you're fucking leaving it. Like you're an asshole, dude."
Mm-hmm.
He was right, and then he's like, "Yeah, if we ever meet again, watch your back." I was like, "All right."
Yeah.
It's like, you're gonna shit your pants if Guts walks towards you. Get out of here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Is it bad that I found it almost comical though that was how Corcus went out? I was like, this makes sense for him.
Oh, it's
Yeah, it
totally
adds
fitting.
up.
He would absolutely give up and be like, "Give me that booba, man."
Yeah,
Yep.
he's absolutely the biggest horn dog in the Band of the Hawk.
Yeah.
So I was like, this makes sense. It's sad, but it's kind of funny.
He honestly had like the happiest death out of anyone because of
And
that.
I don't
he's
know
just like,
though,
"Oh."
man. Don't the people that die like that, aren't their souls stuck in purgatory? And I don't know. I don't know if it was good. I mean, okay, yeah, sure, he went out in a nice way, I guess, but like you're stuck in some kind of hell limbo.
I mean, happiest is like a strong way to, you know, nothing's happy about what happened, but
least
if
bad.
you had to choose,
Least bad. He probably got eaten real quick.
yeah, exactly.
And who knows? Maybe he made it into like, I don't know, booba purgatory.
Boob world.
Oh my god. No. He's in a world where there is no booba now.
L for my man.
Honorable mention, I just want to say Pippin has the coolest death during the eclipse.
Oh, he goes out swinging, and it's like so sad too because I love him. He's just like the friendly giant.
Yes.
You know.
I always imagine he never actually does this, but I always imagine him battle going Pippin, just yelling his own name like, "Yeah, get him, Pippin!" It's like a Pokemon.
Yeah, but then they show that shot like when Guts sees him, and then it like turns around to his back, and you just see there's nothing in him. I was like, no.
Yeah, no.
Poor Pippin.
Yeah, all of the Hawks dying was real rough, especially Judo for sure.
Yeah, I was. devastated. That is probably the most upset I've ever been watching something since like Old Yeller.
Yeah. If you guys have ever seen it, it's a '90s anime called Blue Gender. That was the first anime that made
Yes.
me have fucking tears when
That
characters
anime.
died.
That was another anime. Lots of characters died very fast.
Mm-hmm.
I've not seen that one. I'm trying to. I
Damn it.
I shouldn't say I don't get emotionally invested in anime. There are definitely animes I've been emotionally invested in, like Attack on Titan's one, probably because it's the longest one that I've watched, so I've just had the time to like get attached. A Kame Ga Kill was one that got me. If either of you have ever seen that, that has some very unexpected twists to it that made me a little upset. But
I have not seen it.
I was full body sobbing after the eclipse.
Oh,
I had to go out. I was like muting my mic. I was snotting everywhere. I walked out into our living room. My husband was playing Apex, and he just goes, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No, I'm not."
everybody's dead.
And
So he was like mid-ranked game trying to console me.
I I remember you telling me that, and I warned you about the horse. I know
Oh,
you've gone into.
yeah.
How was
I
the
think
horse scene?
I mean, I have not read it yet, but it's in the anime,
Yeah.
the 2016 one, briefly, and I have a feeling, just judging based off of how horrifying it was seeing it in the anime, and the anime is fairly toned down compared to the manga. Um, I'm not going to enjoy that.
Yeah,
uh,
it's one of the most fucked up scenes.
ugh, yeah, it was pretty fucked up watching it, and like, because you can connect the dots, like,
It's
and I was like, oh no.
you almost feel awkward watching it because it's like, I shouldn't be seeing this. Like, no. All right, guys, that is where we're ending it today. You can go check out MulletWesker and Mads on Twitch. Mullet, what's your Twitch link?
Twitch.tv/MulletWesker, no space.
Mads?
It's twitch.tv/QveenMads. But instead of a U, it's a V.
I will also put those links in the description and on the screen right now. So please check them out. They're both awesome. Next time, have a good one.